Hi, welcome to another episode of News Through the Eyes of Scripture. I'm your host, Mike Beckett, along with the other host, our co-host here, Steve Winters. Looking good there
Hello.
in the background. Lovely, lovely weather. It's fall where you're at, I see. It is good to connect again. Last time we talked about world events that were happening and kind of aligned them from a biblical perspective, gave kind of what we thought on them, and kind of moved forward. So there's a lot happening since we last talked. So let's kind of get into some of that. One of the first things I'd like to bring up shortly after we spoke last time was the Louisiana is now the first state, believe it or not, the first state to mandate, if you will, the Ten Commandments be put in all public classrooms from kindergarten to state-funded universities. And they have a poster-sized display of the Ten Commandments that's easily readable font for people to read. Now, I'm sure this is great news from the perspective of, hey, I'm a Christian and this is wonderful. We got the Ten Commandments back. We're really winning this country back to Jesus. And it's going to start with Louisiana. And I know there are other states in the process of now wanting to try to do this, but I do, as a believer and as an American, have a little bit of a concern here, because what happened to the separation of church and state?
Yeah,
That's my big
that
thing.
little thing.
I think it's great that we want to let our faith kind of take precedent in our educational system, because if we look at it, our educational system is probably destroying faith and Christianity on a regular basis from the liberalism that's being taught. But at the same time, I think we're also constitutionally violating that freedom of religion component, to where it almost seems as if, well, we're forcing Christianity down the throats of people who aren't. So we've got that paradox there, and kind of interested to hear what you would think about that.
Well, I think the Establishment Clause argument is clear. We're just waiting for the court cases to be filed and to make their way to decisions. But I'm probably pretty much with you on this. I mean, they took prayer out of the public schools back in the early '60s, and that seems to have been a moral disaster for America. But from a legal standpoint, it's hard to say that it was the wrong decision. It was the wrong decision from a moral standpoint, but I don't think it was necessarily a wrong decision from the standpoint of what's actually in our Constitution. And I think that this is the kind of thing, if it was a Ten Commandments being shown like in a sculpture or some kind of a relief at a courthouse or things of that nature, there wouldn't be a big issue, because you're just dealing with the various kinds of things that have informed common law throughout Western tradition and in America itself. But in the classrooms, boy, that seems like there's only one point to that, and one point alone, and that is to make a religious statement to kids in public schools.
Yeah.
And I don't see how it's constitutional. I don't see how it's going to pass muster in the court. I get, that all remains to be seen. It's not that I have anything against the Ten Commandments being out there. It's just that is it government's job to be the one doing the promoting? And I don't think so at all.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you think about it, the last thing we want to do is forcefully proselytize Christ to those who really have no desire to want to be bothered with it, or at the same time may have had a very negative effect with Christianity in the past. It just seems to me like we're just trying to slap everybody in the face again with this, if you will, crusader type method.
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, when you think about it.
Well, and it's absent Christ, right? I mean, the Ten Commandments may have some kind of a convicting a process. Kirk Cameron was famous for running around. I forget the name of the evangelist that he so loved. That the whole approach evangelism for them was to hit people with the Ten Commandments, demonstrate that they're a sinner, and then bring the gospel, so that stepping stone was kind of in place for everyone that they were trying to bring to faith. The Ten Commandments. Why would a Christian want? I would be much happier with a cross. I mean, really. I mean, if we're going to do something that has some kind of real religious purpose to it, that would be the better one. Let's demonstrate, put a some kind of a replica of the cross in every room. To put the Ten Commandments in seems to me to be wrongheaded on both sides, right? It's wrong from the standpoint of the Ten Commandments is not the gospel. It's not the gospel of Christ. It's telling people to behave yourself or else, more or less, which is nothing but a avenue toward being lost.
Yeah.
The Galatians, I think the book of Galatians clearly teaches us that we don't hold on to the law. We don't see it as having some kind of usefulness, some kind of spiritual usefulness to us. It doesn't. Um, so I mean, to me, I don't know. When I saw this coming out, when it was reported in the news, first I thought I'm not seeing it straight. Then you read it and you're like, no, this is happening. This is the law down there. And so to me, probably it probably was motivated by Christian believers, I would imagine. And I think that they were wrong on the basis of the spiritual aspect of it. The Ten Commandments is not an evangelistic tool, and, and it's wrong, I think, from a constitutional standpoint in America. So, I think it's over two. Um, and
They say their argument, proponents of this law are basically saying that it's not solely religious, but it has historical significance. And the law's language of the Ten Commandments, basically kind of backtracking to what we just said, describes as kind of the foundational documents of our state and national government. So basically, our state and national government and our laws were put into place because these were kind of the core of maybe what the founders were thinking. Of course, we've had that discussion before about whether or not we were really trying to have a a gospel America here. Especially with slave owners and
yes,
mistresses, and the list just gets longer and longer.
well, just the alcoholism of the early Americas. I mean, rum and whiskey, was in some places more on the streets of running down in streams than rain or water itself. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, to me, it's all it seems like it's all a bunch of window dressing that is maybe, I don't know, this nefarious motivation behind it all is to try to keep everyone manageable. And like I say, I wouldn't have a problem if it was on the courtroom and it was about that. But this putting it in every, like, what does a kindergartner know about common law or about the legal foundation for much of our thought of what morality, even as applying to law, is? I mean, that's not something you teach in kindergarten anyhow. Just seems to me like there is no way to hide the ulterior motive here.
Yeah. Well, you could teach don't covet thy neighbor's stuff. So if you're playing with a toy and then the other
Yeah.
person comes and takes it. So there's a lesson there you could learn. But and you have to sit back and wonder with the way our Supreme Court is set up today. Definitely conservative. Thank God for that. In how we look at them revoking the Roe v. Wade, which again, when that happened, I was a big fan,
That was
because
bad law.
when it was invoked back in the day, again, we put that this needs to be a state issue. It's clearly stated within the Constitution. This is a state issue, not a federal issue. Federal government should never have been, never should be, and never should again be involved in abortion and doctor making decisions and things of medical. I mean, it's clear of what is state rights and what is federal rights. And this court finally sat back and had the gumption enough to say, you know what? This was interpreted wrong. We need to make sure we fix this right for the American people. Of course, your liberal left are going to go berserk because they don't understand. All they think about is themselves. They don't understand the truth and the depth that constitutional law has on our country. We just like to pull out. It's kind of like scripture. We just like to pull out what we want that applies to us and run with that and not look at the whole big picture. And as a result, that was the mess we've been in for 40 plus years here in this
Well,
country.
Mike, how many people in America do you really think understand that according to our Constitution, the government that has more impact on your life and should have more impact on your life is the state government? I
Yeah.
mean, Yeah, our Constitution it does not did not envision a far-reaching, overactive federal government that was telling you, what to eat, what to drink, how to act, what to say and what not to say. That is not at
Yeah.
all.
How to define marriage, what could,
Oh my,
oh
yeah.
my goodness. Yeah, that is not the case. Yeah,
So
you're right.
yeah. Now the even that marriage law, I mean, that when the Supreme Court came out with that, I could see that one coming, because there you have an issue of one state um, having a contractual understanding of a marriage that differs from another state, and it was, a couple crosses a state line, and suddenly their life is completely turned upside down, because in one state not seeing that one way and another state not seeing that a different way. So I mean, I was just kind of like waiting as the states started making it legal, and other states started making it clear that it wasn't going to be legal in their states. I just saw that was going to get ripe, and they would make that decision. But for the most part, right, it's just as you said, is there are the reason why we have this autonomy, this power within the states, was the founding fathers were afraid of a strong, overpowerful, overarching government, federally.
They didn't want a king.
They did not
They
want a
did not
king.
want a king.
And you're much more likely to avoid that on the state level than you are on the federal level. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
And it'll be interesting to see if they actually, because I know, I guess whispers around the Supreme Court have been they have talked about revoking the definition of marriage and bringing it back to the states. I had think in the midst of all of that leakage of the Roe v. Wade before it actually happened, that was another one that they were working on. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. I mean, of course, we just had a Supreme Court give Trump ultimate immunity and any other president ultimate immunity from doing wrong again, whether that's a good or a bad. I think, here's what I think would happen with that case, just on a side note. I think the Supreme Court, being as conservative as they are just tired of the witch hunts that they keep going after this man and trying
And
to
every
link everything. And as soon as a court throws it out, or Trump wins, they go and they search for some other loophole to try to get this guy in and get him down on something and try to find.
Where do they search? They always go to a place where there is going to be a Democratic executive, of whether it's in a city or a state, a Democratic executive. They're looking for a Democratic populace to draw a jury from, and they're looking for Democratic prosecutors, various attorneys, states attorneys, and whatnot. And that is actually chilling to see that the legal system can be used as a weapon, as it has been against Donald Trump, who, Donald Trump's not my favorite guy in the world. I mean, by a long stretch.
Yeah.
But I mean, for somebody to cherry picked as far as the setting and situations for felony charges, it's just ridiculous. And I think you're right. I think that they started, I think probably they were pulling their hair out over this for a while, and now they had an opportunity to try. I mean, I did not realize why it was taking them so long to come out with something. When they finally came out, and they had like this three-tiered understanding of it, then what immunity actually falls to the president. It's like, wow, I guess this took some time to try to figure this out.
Yeah, well, you've got to take the time. I mean, was it we one of the articles you had sent me was, Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey has announced his plans to sue the state of New York over the whole
Yeah.
Trump's trial and conviction on charges of falsifying business records, saying that the case was brought to interfere with his presidential election campaign, which, you have to sit back and you think, we've been, since Trump got elected, first, he gets elected, all of a sudden it's a Russian conspiracy, probably because
Yeah.
he's married to a Russian woman. And all to come to find out in the end that Hillary Clinton was the one who
Behind it
paid
all.
to find dirt out on Trump. So everything that they were saying Trump was trying to do for Hillary came out in documents, unclassified documents or classified documents and things of that nature, that Hillary was the one that was doing this. But yet we're still not liking Trump. I mean, 20 years ago, every Democrat, every Republican liked Trump. Soon as he gets into office and the media says, hey, you need to hate Trump, we hate Trump. Again, like you said, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan, but look at the options we have right here. I mean,
Yeah.
come on. I think Trump might have hit the nail on the head when he said Sleepy Joe. I think he was pretty much on target with Sleepy Joe. I mean, the dude can't walk by himself. He's determined to stay in this race, although I hear there have been meetings and meetings in the last week between governors who now are supportive, but now there's other people who are saying we might end up pulling him out of the race. Then the question is, who are we left with? You know, Newsom from California comes in. Well, that's a definite landslide for the Republicans win, because there's a part where Newsom is so liberal that he will definitely lose all moderate Democrat votes because of his liberalism. Of course, you can't have Kamala sitting up front on the ticket. She's about as dumb as a doorpost. And
Well, she laughs every time she gets a little nervous.
yeah, and the whole other thing is she is definitely not a vice president because she knows nothing about international politics whatsoever. And again, neither one of those two even went down to the border until what, the second year of their term. I mean, we've had Trump down at the border many times, even still offering to spend his own money. We've had Trump at many of these national disasters, the one in Ohio. Trump's the first one that's there. He's not even president. And then, oh, the Democrats wake up and realize they need to have their PR. I mean, this is a joke. This whole White House, this whole anything coming out of there, this whole group is just one big fat joke and a slap in the face of democracy as we continue to move forward. I mean, if this is the best we've got for the Democratic ticket.
Well, I've been watching Joe Biden since he first came into prominence back in the early 70s. You know, that's what comes when you have all this gray hair, right? And age, you've been around for a while.
Yeah.
You know, he was an idiot from day one. I mean, he's the president of the United States. I have no idea how he actually got there. We'll leave that to another discussion, right?
Yeah.
But
it's all those absentee ballots that came in Philadelphia that were 100% voted for Biden. Remember, the statistically impossible happened.
Well, yeah, when you have more votes than mail-in ballots that were mailed out by the State Department of Elections. So, yeah. Well, you know, it's one of those things. He never, when he had his whole wit about him, he was an idiot then. He just he's always been bombast and what he thinks is charm and charisma. You know, he thinks that putting up his dukes and trying to act like a tough guy from the streets of Scranton is actually appealing to somebody. You know, you remember when he challenged to knock out Trump a few years ago? It's like, oh, come on. It's just the standard shtick for him, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah.
And he's been singularly unimpressive his entire life. I can't believe that now that he's, well, senile, demented, whatever you want to say, I can't believe that the Democratic Party is willing to roll the dice, bank it all on Joe Biden. But, you know, look what they did in 2020. That looked like that was going Bernie Sanders' way, right?
Yep.
And the machine apparatchiks in the background, they got into quick action when it looked like it was almost inevitable, and try to turn that someplace, any place other than Bernie Sanders. So this is what we get, right? We come.
You know, when Trump's president, everybody's worried this guy needs to take a mental health test. We need to check his mental capability. We need to make sure whatever, you know, the invoking the 28th. We need to do this, do that. Nobody cares anything about Biden. Biden's totally there. And then he has this debate. Now, all of the sudden, the left is like, well, maybe we ought to invoke that 28th. Maybe we ought to check on the mental health. Maybe we ought to make sure that, you know, he's really capable of running our country. I mean, we knew he wasn't capable of running our country when he ran the last time. But that wasn't an issue. You know, we just wanted to get on Trump and make sure he was mentally capable. You know, it's just totally backwards. So now they, you know, when we've only got 5 months, you know, when we think about it, 5 months to an election, to a new president, and they're backpedaling as quick as they can to figure out how to fix this. I don't know the legalities that are going to take place if they decide, we're going to remove Biden and what they have to do for each state, because they they've already had states have already had their primaries. For the most
Oh,
part,
it's
I
a
think,
mess.
yeah. So I don't really see the Democrats being able to pull out of this one unless they steal another election. When you think
Well,
about it.
in 2020, the power brokers behind the scene decided that Bernie Sanders was not a person that they could stomach. He was too loose of a cannon, I think, for the party. So I mean, they went with the one politician that they thought had name recognition enough to have a sudden campaign. What did he come into the campaign? What it was like December, January. I mean, it was really late.
Mhm.
And they put out Joe Biden, propped him up and whatnot. And I don't know that he was capable 4 years ago. He certainly isn't now. And the fact that he's in power and the 25th Amendment is the only way to get him out of power
Yeah,
at this
yeah. I
point.
said 28th. I meant 25th. Yeah.
And so it's this. Well, I wanted to get I wanted to make a campaign poster for this election, and instead of saying Trump 2024, I wanted to say Trumpet 2024.
That'd be nice. Yeah. Well, hey, you know, uh, let's see what Erdogan continues to do down there in Turkey, and we'll wait to see.
Yeah, it would solve a
Oh,
lot of problems for a lot of us, wouldn't it?
I'll tell you, I wouldn't have to worry about any of my debt issues or anything like that, or crashes that come from time to time. I'd just be able to say, you know what, I'm out of here. They can all fix it later.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, even personally, right? I mean, for me, it's like I wouldn't have to worry about this cardiac rehab trying to
Yeah.
get myself back up to snuff after that heart attack. So,
And we
um,
wouldn't have to worry about our great economy that Joe Biden keeps telling us we have. We have such a great economy. We've
with
got
no inflation.
with no inflation, and yet the housing market is plunging the lowest since COVID.
Well, it's absolutely overpriced, and so no one can get in it, and no one can deal with it. So
you know, it,
interest rates are way too high, prices are
yeah,
way too high.
yeah.
Misery index from a famous leftist of the past who was a disaster, one Jimmy Carter, comes to mind, does it not?
Yeah.
You have inflation and interest rates both high instead of going in opposite directions, and just a mess in other ways. Now, this is not the same situation as that, of course, but
Right.
there's plenty of misery.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you hear out there that it's a buyer's market, not a seller's market. And I have to sit there and wonder, how can it still be a buyer's market when the interests, the low interest rates that they're paying are starting between 4.1 and 5.7% just to get a mortgage.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's almost another $450 uh
It's a
a month.
it's I think it's a seller's market, and I see that from the prices that are going around in our area. I mean, in the general area, houses have gone up. I want to say probably between 50 and maybe 75% in the last 4 years. It's not unusual to see houses selling in this area over 500,000, and this is in not overly wealthy suburban areas, or even little private enclaves. This is just family dwellings in relatively normal spaces, and that is, how in the world does anyone deal with the kind of financial burden that those
Yeah.
kinds of price tags are going to create?
I was looking at numbers the other week about, well, what if I sold my house? What would it go for today from what I paid for it? And if I looked at what I paid for it and what I could sell it for, it went up 155%
Wow.
since we moved in here in 2018. Now, I think the price was lower because the people we were buying from had one of those reverse mortgages, so I think they were kind of locked in at how much they could sell it for. But I know the house down the road from us, which had an unfinished basement and was the same space as ours, but it included unfinished space, sold for 285 when we did it, and that was well more than we paid for our home. But yeah, I was looking at numbers. It was the other week, last week or the week before. I'm like, I wonder what the percentage rate is since we moved in here. 155% my house market value went up.
There's no inflation, Mike. It couldn't be.
It is. And I don't know what the value of the home would have originally been, but I guess with like you said, with a great economy, no inflation, it's somebody's giving him the wrong numbers, or he just is. Maybe he's adapting to that new math we teach in high school.
That's the scary part, though, right? Is when you see how absolutely incapable he is of putting two sentences together, and knowing that he is not only the man with his hand on the nuclear button, he is a commander in chief, and ultimately is giving or not giving the orders to the military. And when I say not giving, I don't mean somebody else is giving them, but it's just like if he doesn't have the gumption to do a thing that needs to be done, it's a mess.
It's interesting because Sean and I were just talking about this the other day. We just had this kind of discussion, and one of the things we said, or she said to me, was she says, what's the scary part is if somebody in North Korea, which I can't, or Russia or Vietnam or China decides to launch a nuke, this gentleman has 7 minutes to make a decision. Well, if he's going to bed now at 8 o'clock and not going to have any appointments and not be woken up till the morning, what's going to happen in the middle of the night if North Korea launches a nuclear attack toward the United States? Are we going to wake him up? Are we going
to 7 minutes to do it?
Yeah, we're done. I mean, she said he's got 7 minutes to respond to a nuclear attack on the United States and figure out where he wants and what he wants to do. And like you said, he can't even put two sentences together. How are we going to be confident enough that this guy is going to be able to do the job? I mean, obviously he hasn't. He in the last debate, he said, I never said I was going to get rid of fracking. I never said I was going to do this. And the first executive order he did was shut down all of our lines and put hundreds of thousands of people out of work. I think America needs to wake up a little bit here when we start talking about who's president. I get it. Trump's a chauvinistic pig. He's an arrogant person. He doesn't know when to shut his mouth. But the reality is our country was running a heck of a lot better with him than this joke of an administration.
And no matter what else you say about the guy, Trump was, in my lifetime anyhow, and I would say probably goes back even long before then, but he was the only politician I've ever seen in office that made a valiant attempt to actually fulfill all of his campaign promises.
Yeah.
You just don't see politicians. I mean, once they are elected, right, then it's all about governance. And so they throw everything that they ran on out the window for the most part and do whatever it is that they want to do. Whereas Trump got into office, he actually made an attempt to fulfill his campaign promises. And, if COVID wouldn't have come along, that was really the only thing that really submarined him as a president at all. And that's a debacle that I don't know. I think you could write a conspiracy novel on that and probably not have to even be fictional to have an exciting, head-turning, head-spinning, who did it and why did they do it kind of a story, keep you in all kinds of suspense right to the very end.
Perfect timing. Go, perfect timing, perfect timing for a presidential election. We were talking last time about the anti-Semitism that exists here in the United States and the sudden increase. I will have to say I noticed in the news, I believe this was today when I checked this morning, just to kind of throw this out there, is that we've had these Hamas people shutting down universities, stopping graduations. In fact, interestingly enough, it was last week Hamas went and did anti-protests at an LGBTQ parade, at a pride parade. And did anti-Semitic protests and anti-gay protests at a pride parade. And of course, it's the first time that we heard the media say that Hamas is anti-homosexual. Now, they didn't so far as say that Islam is, even though it is. They just said Hamas is anti-homosexual. The reality is all of the Abrahamic religions are anti-homosexual because within their laws, which they all agree to, it is a sin. It is forbidden. And in some cultures, Islamic culture especially, it is punishable by death. But I was highly excited to see that Columbia University fired 3 staff members for their anti-Semitic text messaging back and forth to each other. That was very anti-Semitic. I don't know how else to say it. But basically in the sense of, very discriminatory, very full of hate. And they said that these 3 are an example to set that this will not happen again. So at least one university, months and months and months later, is finally waking up and realizing that this is something that should not be. Now, whether it was a political move, whether it was a move to save their university from constituents who have said, if you don't do something now, we're not going to give you the money. But at least they've stepped forward and fired 3 of their staff members for that at this point. And I thought that was great. That was good news to hear this morning.
I can go with you on that too. I think in my lifetime, I'm kind of shocked. I remember when I was young, was even before I was a person of faith, but I remember how it was the other way around, that there was a certain protectiveness, particularly toward the Jews because of the Holocaust. And boy, you didn't dare say a word against Israel. You didn't dare say a word against the Jews. You didn't do that at the university. You didn't do anywhere else because it would have been brought out and it would have been labeled as anti-Semitic, and it would have been the end of your future. Now, at the end of my life, man, it's flipped over, and it has people protecting some of the most vile, most violent, most indiscriminate killers that exist. And somehow or another, there's a justification for it in the minds of people who are supposed to be for. I mean, if you're liberal and leftist, right, you're supposed to be for the common man. Where I mean, I cannot believe that, given the fact that Israel is a liberal society, a democratic society, a society that has a fairly decent understanding of what are the rights of man and the government's duty to abide by them and protect them, and they're siding with people that'll do things like find a way to go out and string up a homosexual, or go across the border on a Saturday when everyone's watching a music show and start killing them all, raping wantonly. Um, I do not understand that at all. So that was Columbia, right?
Columbia University, yeah.
Good for them for doing something that makes a statement, because up at Columbia it was definitely going the other way around
Yeah.
for a while.
Well, you have to remember too, at this stage in our life, the Holocaust never happened, according to most liberals. We've gone past the stage. I mean, even our history classes, depending on which university you're going, it's a farce, which is not the reality, but that's the stuff we teach. in the women's swim events in the Olympics. And I know these have been contentious things because we have high schools that refuse to play sports. Girls high schools refuse to play sports with other girls teams that have boys. Not fair. Obviously, we know the genetics and the body makeup of that. But I have to commend the Olympic trial council team, whoever they are, for saying, enough is enough. Now, they did say that they could compete if they went under transgender hormonal therapy prior to the age, I think, of 10 or 12, prior
Before,
to
yeah.
prior to puberty and the onset of that. So it isn't a total win, but it is a win enough that at least hopefully these Olympics this year will be fair. Also, the individual, I forget what the girl's name is. I should know it because it's all over the news. But the one that Leah Thomas took all of the women's college sports records for, she has been not disbarred, but she basically has been released from her awards, and they have been given to the female who came in second. So there's another, and I think that's only because that female actually won a 500 and some $1 million lawsuit against the university and so forth. But we're starting to see a little bit of cleanup there, maybe. But it's interesting to see and kind of look forward as to how rampant is this transgender thing going to become.
It is so beyond the pale of just straightforward reasoning that anyone would see a physical natural male as being, not just any old physical natural, but a trained athlete. Seeing that somehow or another it would be fair to plop them into the middle of competition with females and have that be fair, it's ridiculous. Really, to tell you the truth, if they want to do something like that and they're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes or not shameful of the situation at all, they should be pushing for a third category of sports. You have male, you have female, and you have transgender. That's what they should do, and let them compete where there is competition, where there's some kind of equality. But to
see, they would look at that as
separate but equal, right?
Yeah. They would definitely look at that as discrimination. Well, you're discriminating against us.
Well,
No,
we
we're
are
just
discriminating against them. As nature discriminates between a male and female, we're discriminating against or between a biological female and a biological male. That's why we don't put them. We don't have boxing matches with men versus women in them. We don't have foot races against male athletes against female athletes. And we've been doing that for years because there is a distinction that can be discriminated between these two classes of people. And they should be equal before the law. But as far as competition goes, they should be in a place where, athletic competition where that makes sense. Now, there's no difference between a male and a female if you're going to play chess. No difference between a male and a female. I would even say possibly in something like automobile racing. But when it comes to things that are, just those more purely physical athletic activities, like running and jumping and, boxing and wrestling, it's ridiculous to put males and females onto the same stage and ask them to compete one against the other.
I just read last night too. I believe it was on the news. I want to say it was Montana or one of the states in the Midwest also has now banned. It has made a ban or a law basically not allowing drag queens to be able to do anything in libraries anymore. I forget which state it was. I saw that last night real quickly before I hit the bed. But one of the states in the union has said no more drag queens and libraries. We're not doing that anymore. You are no longer allowed to do that here in our state. So I'm interested to see where that goes legally.
Yeah, that's going to hit a wall, I think.
Yeah. I mean, because the reality is if you can't have drag queens, they're going to argue with them. You can't have religion. You can't have these other things. So somewhere along the line, that's going to have to change. But this is definitely a topic I have a feeling that will be ongoing because our country is just so distorted. And
Right?
obviously, the identity that people have is not in Christ. So therefore, since their identity is not in Christ, they don't see the flaws and the sin and the ignorance that they're living in. So hopefully, at some point, but
Well, you would think that common sense would be sufficient, like
ah,
in some of these cases.
common sense.
But well, I mean, it's like it doesn't take any work at all to tell the difference between a female and a male. I mean, that's not that's not an inherently religious perspective. It's not really an inherent any other kind of perspective. But I mean, we have, talk about the intelligentsia, like we were talking about at Columbia, and finally they got the anti-Semitic thing a little more in the right focus. But the intelligentsia in this country, all across the universities, they're saying, no, no, it isn't all that clear. That it's there's and it's like, wait a second, a description of a man is a pretty clear thing, and that's different than the description for a woman. And for the most part, DNA makes the
I was
difference.
just going to say, take a look at the DNA and the XY, and let's just look at the chromosomal makeup. Doesn't matter if you biologically change to a woman. If I biologically change to a woman, my DNA makeup's still going to read male,
That's right.
no matter what happens. So
And
I'm
if you
not
don't,
escaping that.
if you don't continue to take hormone therapy, you won't retain the whatever difference that you achieve.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, there are genetic abnormalities. Some are born androgynous with certain syndromes along there, and
Yeah.
and so those cases are I mean, people just have to deal with them the best they can. Um, but that's not the rule. That's the
Yeah.
exception.
So turning our heads over to the other side of the world, the big question is, because there is still tension with Israel and Hezbollah, is are they literally, and this is just a couple weeks ago, the big question, big story is, are they literally on the verge of a full-blown war? At this point, the question is, can we even avoid a full blown war? And I think we hinted a little bit on this last time, but the reality is, where do we still see? I mean, we're still going on here. Israel and Hezbollah and Hamas and the whole state of Israel today, and Palestine and Gaza is in turmoil and a mess, and there's continued fighting. Is this something that is just going to eventually go away, or is this going to be one of those things that we see that it's not going to go away until Israel wins?
Well, I think as far as Hamas, I don't think Israel can let it go until they get all of their people back minimally.
Mhm.
And I think that Israel finds itself in a situation where the only leverage they have is to continue to just destroy Gaza, bring down the buildings, knock out infrastructure, just continue to destroy Gaza until they finally say uncle. And it seems like maybe that might be getting close. So that situation might resolve itself if no other players jump in and cause a confusion or just make things suddenly very muddied.
Yeah.
Hezbollah would be a good actor in that regard. I mean, even the Houthis down in Yemen are lobbing missiles and creating problems. All of them have one thing in common, is that their patron is Iran, and Iran has come out now and said that if it does go into like a total war, that Israel taking out Hezbollah in the north would bring Iran with boots on the ground and an out and out war. So it really, I would say the next couple of months in Gaza is where the issue lies, and there it's about how much destruction does Israel have to wreak until Hamas is either thrown out of power by the Gazans, the Palestinian folks in the Gaza Strip, or that they themselves finally just capitulate and realize they've got no place to go with this. It's going to be their end if they keep on going. So the only way out of that is for them to give up hostages. It's the only way out of that. So for both Israel and for Hamas.
Yeah.
So
And
can we be optimistic on that issue? I don't know.
yeah, well, and you had mentioned before the show here, Iran's situation has changed a little bit with their recent elections. You had said
The moderate supposedly got
yeah,
elected,
we'll see
which,
how far he stays, how long he stays alive, I guess, before.
well, we'll see how firmly the Ayatollahs can get puppet strings on him. I mean, really, it's how controllable is he? For all we know, it's all a front anyhow. I mean, we we really don't know, at least from the standpoint of just ordinary folks here in the West, right? I mean, intelligence sources might know, but um, for all you know, even the people that are supposedly reformists and whatnot in Iran are actually just plants by the Republican Guard or someone up in intelligence in Iran. So
Yeah.
um, it's so hard to see a way in which the Ayatollahs will let even a little slice of daylight come between themselves and control of that country.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I do think the Iran involvement in particularly war in Israel is the thing from a prophetic standpoint that is to be watched, because they're going to be Persia. Iran is going to be the first step into the Middle East, and now they're signing that agreement with Russia. So if Persia is making a step there, Russia's on the other side, making the other foot is going to be
Hmm.
Russia. And
And
then
that
we
lead,
have,
yeah, and that leads to the recent peace treaties that we got have since we've last spoken, between North Korea and Russia have firmed a complete treaty. Putin has gone to Vietnam to secure a treaty with them and secure an alliance. And we've also, in the process, have sent the USS Theodore Roosevelt over to the sea in North Korea. So over to the China, actually the China Sea, around China and North Korea, just to kind of be there. And if you're not sure what the USS Theodore Roosevelt is, it is a highly nuclear powered vessel for the United States. So that should send some flags up if any common person is just reading the news like, this doesn't make sense here. Why are we sending our one of our most nuked vessels, highly nuked vessels, over into this region? Well, Putin is working with Vietnam and North Korea and Iran and China to have global peace, as he says. I'm not quite sure what his verbiage or ideology of global peace would be. Probably global peace with them ruling the world. But that should be something we should really, really, like you had said, be concerned about and keep watching on, because when we look scripturally, there's a lot of arrows that point to what's going on right here with these alliances and how it plays into the current potential military conflict that's going on here in Israel right now.
well, it's interesting, even just the way that those alliances that Putin is trying to work to his favor. He's trying to reestablish, of course, the Soviet bloc, but um, going to Vietnam and China have historically not gotten along famously, right? There's a lot of cross interest there as well. So if he's going to Vietnam trying to reestablish friendlies and maybe something even a little bit more with Vietnam, it almost looks like he's trying to, at the same point in time that he's reaching out to China, he's trying to encircle China with his own sphere of influence, which would be a classic Russian maneuver if that's the case. And I think it probably is the case. But here's the thing, that sets up really well for biblical prophecy in this respect, is the whole Ezekiel 38, 39, Ezekiel 38 and chapter 39 as well. They set up the scenario where Russia and Persia, the prince of the north and Persia are coming into Israel and get famously destroyed, as according to the prophecy there in 39. But that would leave China basically untouched, which then would kind of play into the scenario where you have that sudden concern from the Antichrist. He gets news from the north, from the east, that causes him consternation, and I think it's going to be the armies of the east moving east or moving west, and this would make sense. This
Hmm.
kind of alignment and alliance network would make
Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
prophetically, if we're in the time for that to happen.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I'm ready. Ready. Let's
Trumpet,
get out of here.
trumpet 2024.
2024, right. And we also have to keep in mind too, Russia has space nukes that could threaten us. They have the ability to nuke us from space now. Uh,
Well, it almost seems like it's weird. It almost seems like things have flip-flopped from the former age of these kinds of alliances, because back then it was Russia being more or less the manufacturing platform for all of the folks that they were dealing with, and that's how it worked. Whereas now China is the manufacturing platform for all of these folks, and uh, we just live in a really interesting time. Scary a little bit, but interesting
yeah.
nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah. Finally, with the North Korea and Russia, the fact that they've also come together with a mutual defense pact, basically for the whole set. If one goes to war, the other one's going to go to war. We've got your back here, which kind of is a little bit of a scary thing, because the question is, will Russia continue to expand in the Ukraine? Some of your political analysts say they think he might be done temporarily there, while he's trying to build his support group who's going to back him if he does decide to expand anymore, which could be dangerous if North Korea is nuclearly ready, is for sure. I mean, they just shoot missiles off. We really don't know for sure if they're actually ready. With all of this going on with Iran, with North Korea, with Russia, with Vietnam, Turkey's been a little silent in the last month. At first it was, let's go and attack and destroy Israel, and then we talked last time, the sudden pullback. Let's try and make peace now here. But it's been a little quiet from Turkey the last couple weeks.
Oh, you know why that is? It's this unsettled nature amongst big players in the world, America, Russia, China. Um, it that really, to tell you the truth, is still kind of above his head. He's not up to that element, right? And so with the water swirling around there, his play, it seems to me, makes more sense to pull back and see which way the wind blows. And I think that's something of what we're seeing. He wants to basically, I think, come into the vacuum when the dust is settled. I think that's the way to read biblical prophecy, is that the Antichrist, who Erdogan would be a good candidate for that. So let's put it in, let's say it happens in our day, and this would be the case. You would expect the Antichrist in that place, because I believe he's coming from Turkey no matter what. That's where the throne of Satan is. So where would you expect the government or the rulership of the Antichrist to come from? Some people say Rome. It's like, no, that's not where the throne of Satan is. I'm going to go with Turkey. But anyhow, for someone like the Antichrist, right, kind of biding their time, waiting for their moment to step into the place and bring everything together, be the hero that brings everything together, the agent of peace and brotherhood and everything else that brings everything together. He has to be in a situation where he's not involved in the folly that gets blown up in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And it just seems almost like he's
Mm-hmm.
playing a cagey role
Yep.
right now.
And it'd be interesting to see what the next couple months go, like you had said with Israel. If there are, I mean, you've got to take it from the mindset of Israel. If I were Israel, I would not be done until every last hostage was there. And if that means destroying Gaza completely to where it's rubble and dust, and that's what it is. But of course,
They have no choice.
I don't think Iran is going to let that happen to where it's completely decimated. I think at some point they're going to
I
have
think I
to
I
make a
think
decision.
I think Iran has written off Gaza at this point.
Really?
Yeah.
Why would you
Um,
say that?
because they haven't said a thing about Gaza, but they have said don't touch Hezbollah up in Lebanon, right? And so they've drawn the line in the sand up there, and I think that's what they'll do. So I think that in Iran's viewpoint, that whatever strategic benefit Gaza may have had to them as far as what they were doing with Hamas doesn't exist anymore, and that their value, what they think is worth protecting, is the situation with Hezbollah in the north. So that's just my thinking on that.
Do you think Israel would have enough gumption and enough might behind them to press further north once they're done Gaza?
I don't think Israel will do that unless something provocative comes from that point of view.
Yeah.
Um, but that's where the tinderbox is. I mean, Hezbollah, um, how well are they leashed by Iran? Well, I think they're probably fairly tightly leashed by Iran. But you know, things happen. Sometimes commanders are get away with making a blunder before it can be stopped, and all it would take would be Hezbollah dropping a rocket or some kind of a missile or maybe a drone or something else on a children's hospital like happened in Ukraine over this weekend, right?
Yeah.
Do that in Tel Aviv, for instance, and it's going to be on like Donkey Kong,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And then once that happens, Israel has the military might to destroy Hezbollah just like it has Hamas. And the only way Iran can preserve its investment is to bring their own military, into the engagement. And so I think that's what we'll see. It's what Iran has threatened.
Yeah.
And I
It'll be
think,
interesting to see what this new leadership does. Like you said, how many, who's playing the puppet, who's playing
yeah,
what? I think they've already made their mind up of what they're going to do. They're just waiting for this election to clear and kind of making a new idea. I mean, because it's not going to be too much longer till we have the 51st anniversary of Yom Kippur, which
it's a
started
perfect time to
this.
strike, right?
Yeah, it's here we go. We're right back almost a year from now in a few months, and what a perfect opportunity to finish what we never finished back a year ago. And I could see them doing something like that, or coming in, like you said, through Hezbollah or somebody else. But
America is going to be in the chaos of the prime chaos of election season, right? And if it's still Biden, right, we know we've already talked about the confusion involved there.
yeah,
Um, Trying to manage an election, a national election for presidency, while something like this pops up, and then take that. I don't know if they would go on Yom Kippur. I think that would would be like maybe even a better target.
hmm
But they tend to have, there's been so many things when it comes to the opposition to Israel, the terrorism of Muslim terrorism, where they have these favorite events that have happened in history, and they seem to like to go on those anniversaries. So I think you're right. That's a big time to watch, and this season, because the United States is all caught up in this election crisis, and this could be a really interesting fall.
and God forbid Trump wins, we'll have even more of a crisis and rioting, and who knows, political implosion in the streets for 4 months before, yeah, before he
I
can even get
I don't think we
into the move
will.
again. Oh, really? That would be
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
I don't think we will. I think the left has spent. I mean, they have opposed Trump every way that they possibly can over the last 4, 5 years. False stories. Now they're using this the law offices of district attorneys as a weapon. They've spattered him with bad press. they have, in my mind, fomented protest in various ways in various places, whether you're going back to Black Lives Matter and everything that was happening thereafter, and back in the realm of 2020 and 2021, and now with the anti-Israeli things going on, plus all the other leftist little goombas are always looking for a good reason to, go into a hissy fit and protest out in the street and try to stop traffic and stop people going to work and stop people trading stock and all the other things that they've done. I think they've spent their wad. I think they've shot their wad, so to speak. I mean, they're empty. They don't have
And
any.
he's still the most popular man in the United States right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's
You've done everything you can to tear this man down,
they
and he
pumped
is
the
still
shotgun over and over again and shot and shot and shot,
and
and
he
still.
is still the most popular person in the United States when we look at popularity going.
So I really don't think they have anything left. So I don't think that they will. I don't think there will be those big anti-Trump movements from them. That's just me. That's just my thought on it.
Yeah.
But
Hey, we'll soon know.
yeah, it is going to be from Labor Day to Election Day. Katie, bar the door. It's going to be an interesting, wacky time. I know it.
I've already thought of canceling my Direct TV because we don't watch it, and I'm wasting a few dollars a month. I'm like, we don't watch it, and then we don't have to worry about any political commercials because we don't watch it.
I hate them.
I hate going to the mail once Labor Day hits in an election year. Man, that's all you get. I'm like,
Yeah.
you could have paid off our national debt with the amount of advertisements that you've sent me.
Now now you should run for politics. That should be your platform. I'm not going to spend any money on this. We're going to pay off the national debt.
Yeah, you give to my campaign, and what's left over or what we have in the campaign, it's going to go to the national debt. And I guarantee, it's amazing. Well, Steve, as always, it's always good to get together and talk about what's happening in the world, kind of look at it again through the eyes of Scripture, and just kind of, I say, let loose and talk about stuff. And that's one of the things I just hope and pray that people will have a desire to read more of the news. I've known so many people over the years. I don't watch the news. It's too depressing. I don't, you ask somebody, well, why are you voting for this person? Well, because he's a Republican, and a Republican means he's a Christian. Do you know what their platform stands for? What's a platform? You get all of these questions and people don't really understand. They just kind of think they know everything, and they don't tend to take the time to really read and understand what's going on in the world. And I think our culture, especially our Christian culture, is very ignorant in understanding global anything news wise. We tend to follow these people who are on television and take whatever they say as the gospel truth, but yet we don't really understand what's happening in our world and see how it relates to us as believers and how we should be aware of what's going on and continue to be encouraged.
I don't think we should let Pat Robertson do our thinking for us.
Oh, my word. Yeah. Well, I would like 700 donors if you feel like giving to our email and phone number and contact.
700 Club.
700 Club.
There you go.
Or what's the other one? If you don't send me money, God's going to kill me. Well, then he better do that to save us a whole bunch of money later on. Or I need to buy my jet. I mean, we could go on with my list, right?
No, you just pull a Robert Tilton saying, God is healing you, and I can see that's a $500.
And then he'll go, and you've got to give it now, 500 now, or you're not healed. No, we got to make it 1,000. Oh yeah,
got to make your eyes buggy.
Oh man, there's so many. There's this goofy guy coming down to the Lancaster area, and one of those charismatic freaks, and it's just interesting. I think again, I had a discussion this past week. Gentleman that I know, I've gotten to know who he is through one of the churches that I am at, and so I was like, oh, I don't normally friend request people. I said, I'll friend request them. I had conversations with the gentleman. Unfriended me after he friend requested me, and he said, well, I can't friend request you because you have all these things against the NAR, and I can tell you're a cessationalist, and or cessationist, and I believe in the gifts of the Spirit, and I cast out devils, and I do. And I'm thinking to myself, first of all, I'm not a cessationist. I would
I'm a
say
card carrying Pentecostal, so I mean, it's like,
I would say I'm more of a reformed continualist to some degree, but I'm definitely not a cessationist. And he was just and going back and forth, and I'm just like, you know what? Fine, you don't have to friend me. I don't care. You can. It's not really a problem for me. I'm not going to lose sleep whether you're my friend or not on Facebook. The reality is, I'm still going to preach the truth that these false morons and idiots need to be called out on the carpet and be exposed. And if you're too ignorant to understand the truth of the gospel, then you're just going to follow that wide path to destruction. I can't help you otherwise. It's just what you feel like saying to these people because that's the reality. You keep following Kenneth Copeland, you keep following Joyce Meyer, you keep following all these people who want to go out there and preach a prosperity gospel and preach a gospel that's not biblical. You are on that wide path to destruction. I would even to the point sometimes question your own salvation if that's what you're going to go in after. But I can't do it anymore. I can't. The people that go on faith, oh, we just gotta. I'm just given to receive. No, you've got the whole. Your giving's all wrong. I'm going to give to this ministry because I'm going to get 100-fold back. You got a better shot of playing the lottery.
yeah,
It just drives me nuts, Steve. It drives me nuts.
it does me too. It does me from a shepherding standpoint because
Yeah.
I just have dealt with so many people that that I'm trying to help as a pastor that have gotten, I mean, just absolutely twisted up in knots because they've embraced something that supposedly was of faith and by faith and for faith, and that's not what it is at all.
Yeah.
Um,
But it comes back to this whole point of not being informed. They don't spend the time in the scriptures to study the scriptures.
I don't
A
think they
lot.
spend the time with Jesus even
Yeah.
personally in a sense like where's your sense of personal engagement
Mhm.
with the Savior,
Yeah.
that's why I don't like cessationist is because they're number one, they don't have a biblical ground to stand on, trying to remove things that the Bible says are ours from generation to generation. And so they make the people of God poorer in the sense of a relational experience with Jesus Christ. But relational experience of Jesus Christ is going to be pictured by Jesus and the disciples walking together.
Yeah.
It's like, do you see lunacy there? Do you see people waving their coat and prodding the audience to give them yips and yowls? And do you see the call for you to drop money in their pockets? And it's just you don't at all. You see people just simply walking with Jesus
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
finding out what it means that He's Lord and humbling themselves to look to Him,
Yeah.
to follow His teaching. And so that's what it's all about, and all of the various things that come with the Holy Spirit are just part of the richness
Mhm.
of your walk with Jesus,
Yeah.
and for it to be turned into a carnival, turned into a money-making scheme, to be turned into things that actually, teaching that actually teaches the opposite of what, like on the basis of money, for instance. I mean, all of these guys on television that are pushing all of these kinds of ministries, they teach the exact opposite
Of what?
of what Jesus
Yep.
did
Yep.
on money. It just drives me nuts. And then pastors like me, you try to tell people that's not biblical. That's not what the scripture teaches. And the guy on television seems more flashy and more successful and a bigger wig. They're going to listen to him and follow that. And then you end up picking up pieces,
Mhm.
trying to get them to understand. They feel like their whole world is broken, that they don't have faith, or that somehow another God was not faithful on the other hand, and they just don't have any genuine openness relationally
Yeah.
to just walking with Jesus anymore. And that
Yeah.
that irritates me as a pastor,
Yeah.
that there's people out there that are using the precious children of God just shamelessly, without care, without thought. They don't care what they break and bust, and they don't care what the ultimate or end outcome is. That irritates me.
Yeah.
And but there are people rising up. I mean, you're doing your thing. A guy like Mike Winger, he's doing his thing. There's others
Yep.
that are doing their things. I don't like some
I'm
of them.
working on trying to get him on a show too.
Mike Winger,
Yeah. Yeah.
he would be a win if you could
Yeah.
get him on. He'd be a win.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been watching quite a few of his things. One of the
He's
clips,
good.
one of the clips that he had in there, which was rather interesting, and I totally forgot it was around because I saw it many years ago, is one of the interviews that Joyce Meyer had with like CBS or NBC, where they had said to her, don't you think about, aren't you concerned if somebody like decides to give you their money that they should have paid for their mortgage and they end up losing their home? I don't think about it at all. There's the arrogance right there.
Yeah,
That's the arrogance right there. But that's a whole nother episode. Um,
they
that's
don't
a
care.
whole,
They don't care about the sheep, right?
yeah, no, they don't. Nope.
And that's really gets my dander up.
Yeah.
Is that they do what they do and they don't care about the sheep.
Yeah. And all of
Um,
that to say, those of you watching this, you need to stay informed. Read your Bible, stay informed, get in the Word, pay attention to what's happening in the news so that you can stay alert. Don't just believe it because one particular news station tells you it. I love the fact that, oh, we're non-biased. There's no balanced news. You need to be able to take what you hear from CNN and Fox and all these other places and put them together. If you want balanced news, go to Al Jazeera. I mean, they're going to give you a balanced news viewpoint of what they think of the U.S., and it's pretty accurate, right? But I just want to encourage you as you continue to walk your life as a disciple of Christ to walk your life faithfully, as authentic as you can, and just be real. Be real with yourself, be real with God, and be real with others. Um, and
Amen.
uh, and we encourage you to continue to walk that life out. And we'll see you next time here on the show. Have a great day.